So this series has been awesome so far. Derrick Rose was the main dude in this one for the Knicks, man. I mean, in the first half, their offense was struggling pretty heavy, and D Rose was the one guy who could get downhill. Sometimes it was all the way to the rim. Sometimes it was the pull-up jumper that always looks a little awkward to me, but he manages to make it. And it's just really awesome to see Derrick Rose just being this good still. And when you think about the defensive assignments for the Hawks on D Rose, I mean, they're usually putting DeAndre Hunter on Julius Randle, and he is their best on-ball defender. So it's going to be interesting to see just how they deal with D Rose as the series goes along. There's a lot of things to talk about with the rest of the Hawks defense between the zone and doubling Julius Randle, and I think it's really affected Randle in the series. I mean, until about the second half of this game, it seemed like all he was taking in this series was jump shots. But I don't really know how they go at Derrick Rose because, you know, that stuff doesn't work as much, mainly because Rose is the one guy who can just simplify the Knicks offense and just get downhill off of a screen or an ISO and what have you. So we'll have to see what they want to do. I mean, when Rose is getting a screen from Noel or Taj, I guess you could try to trap him and force one of those two big guys to be a playmaker. If he's getting a screen from Randle, you, of course, don't want to trap then, because Randle will definitely make a play if you give him an open floor. So we'll see. I don't think it's easy to switch that. I mean, Randle, sure, he doesn't post up as much as he used to, but you'd think he'd still have that. Now, if it was going to be a switch and then into the double team that they've been throwing at Randle, then okay, that could be an idea. We'd have to see. Now, again, Hunter has been on Randle a good amount of the time. If he switches onto D Rose, I think the Hawks would be willing to live with that, but clearly, Atlanta needs to find some way to slow down Derrick Rose without compromising the things that have worked really well so far. I mean, again, Julius Randle, they've really done a number on him through throwing two defenders at him, and I think some of this is because the Knicks always have that other big guy in the game, whether it's Taj or Noel, which is one guy that you don't have to defend a super lot, right? Just make sure that you're relatively around him near the basket. And again, if you're clogging up the passing lanes with the zone and you're daring somebody on the Knicks to beat you from three, whether it's RJ or whoever else, clearly the Hawks have been comfortable with that up to this point. What I would say with Julius is, you know, maybe it's getting into the post, maybe it's setting screens, perhaps it's getting some screens yourself. Just something to get him going downhill, because that was the other thing that allowed the Knicks offense to pop a little bit more in the second half of this game. Besides D Rose and besides Bullock just having a couple of plays where he relocated off of the catch for a three. And I think Alec Burks had one contested three, if I want to remember right. There was also a dump-off pass to Taj Gibson. But some of those plays were created because Randle was finally able to get into the middle of the Hawks defense, and he was able to get through, whether it's a double or a zone. And some of that is just reacting really quickly off the catch as opposed to Randle's normal, dribble for a while and then chuck up a contested jumper. And yeah, he was making those shots in the regular season, but those are still tougher shots, you know. So that's kind of the take on the Knicks offense. You know, as the series goes on here, you think about, does Elfrid Payton play? Thibodeau gave up on him in the second half. He just went fully to D Rose, and then quickly was the other minutes. I don't think they want to go to Julius Randle at center too much because I feel like it would compromise their defense a little too much. So maybe it's just a matter of putting that guy in a spot to where it's more difficult for the Hawks to then go to the double team and the zone and all that. Although they might always go to that because they just might not respect the Knicks' outside shooting enough. But between Bullock, RJ was better this year, you might have the options. Now, the other thing with the Knicks offense is they're really still not attacking Trae Young a whole lot. And, it didn't end up killing him in this. And they tried a couple times. There was one specifically where Trae did a good job of relocating back onto Bullock in the corner. But there was one where Bullock was off the ball with Trae covering him, and Trae wasn't able to keep up with him. And then that was one of Bullock's big threes in the fourth quarter. So we'll see with that going forward. D Rose would be the best candidate to go at Trae, just because he's got the best north-south game on the Knicks, or Randle if you can manage that. But the Hawks are going to try everything possible to not get Trae involved in some two-man action on Randle. Anyway, to think about the Hawks offense, I mean, they were really rolling, and earlier on, and they had D Rose trying to guard Trey, and it was Peyton, and none of it was working. And to be honest, I don't think a whole lot of it worked throughout the game, but there were stretches where it was like Bullock was on him, and then Noel would step up, or Taj would step up, and it was moments of like these two just bigger guys crowding Trey a bit, and it did work. He was still really good in this game overall, even if he wasn't just doing whatever he wanted in the fourth quarter. But even then, there were still a few passes to guys going downhill, and one of the floaters that he missed in the fourth, or it was the third actually, which really got it was in the middle of the Knicks run. I don't think the defense on it was amazing. He just kind of missed the shot. But we'll see if the Knicks just get more aggressive with that, a wing player on him more and just bringing that extra guy more, because I do think you can dare Capella to be a playmaker. The other thing that I felt like the Knicks did better, mainly in the second half of this, is that they closed out on shooters. I mean, during that run in the third, Gallo missed a three. There was a good closeout by, I think it was Randall Bogdanovich. I think he had like 2 missed threes on either corner, and the contests on those were pretty good. And I mean, some of that's luck, certainly. I mean, the Hawks missed a whole bunch of shots, and sometimes that sort of thing's going to bounce your way, as it did with the Knicks. But even so, it just felt like Atlanta wasn't as comfortable. And, the big thing with the Knicks during the season was they were comfortable with giving up threes. It was more so about who's taking it and can we get a good closeout. And it did seem like they were able to get back to that a little bit more in this second half. I also feel like there were times when they just completely ignored John Collins on the three-point line. Maybe it didn't happen as much as I really think it did, but I mean, the guy had 0 points and he had 15 minutes total, and there's a chance Atlanta will just forget about him as the series goes along. I mean, when Trey is just doing his screen thing with Capella and spraying it out to shooters, Collins doesn't totally fit into that. I mean, sure, he can make threes, but he's not a shooter per se, compared to Herter and Gallo, and you know what I'm saying. And if that's going to be the case, it would honestly be better for them to just go with more Hunter, or maybe even like Tony Snell over John Collins. I mean, if Collins is not going to be a force around the basket, and if they're not going to look his way, then just put a 3-and-D wing out there, because Collins is not that guy. So yeah, man, I think this series has been, it's been great. It's not a matter of thinking. I think we'll all agree. This has been an awesome series so far, and I expect it to continue being that. These are two evenly matched teams. I mean, Atlanta's more talented top to bottom, although if Collins is going to be non-existent, then not so much, really. But the Knicks are definitely better defensively. They're tougher, and, clearly Trae Young has been better than Julius Randle so far, and we'll see if the Knicks can get him going again, setting screens or being in pick and rolls, even if that's not like the most natural thing for Randle. Post-ups, does he still have some post-up game left? And maybe even some sort of action up top, but as I say that, it's like they put the center out there with him, so the spacing isn't going to be just cleared up for cutters and that sort of thing. I don't know. That's up for Tibbs to decide, but it does feel like up to this point, it hasn't been the same like Julius Randle, the playmaker, that it was at parts of the regular season. But still, they got the win. They were amazing midway third into the fourth. I think a lot of that, again, was a little lucky on missed threes, but also doing a better job getting out to the shooters. D Rose was great, and the series could go 7 games.